continue in this tremendous treatise of Usul al-Thalatha by the great Imam al-Mujaddid, rahimahullah. In Usul al-Thalatha, you'll find after the principle like we were discussing from the previous class, we said that if you notice that the Imam that he mentioned the ayah, which is in the book of Allah, subhanahu jalla fil ula, which is in Surah At-Tawbah, which is in Surah Ali Imran. And that was the tafsir of the ayah which we covered from last class. We said in light of what we mentioned last class, as it comes in the statement of Allah, in Surah Ali Imran, ayat number 64, was explaining the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Say to the people of the book, come to a word that is the same or equal between us and you, that we do not worship except Allah, and we do not set up partners with Him anything in the least, and we do not take each other as lords besides Allah. And if they turn away, then say, testify and bear witness that we are Muslimun." Taib, we said from last class, if you look in the ayah, it says ta'alaw. Ta'alaw. As we know, the word ta'alaw in the Arabic language is as if one is saying halummu wa aqbilu, like come, as if the origin of it is tafa'u min al-ulu, as it comes from the word ulu. So linguistically, if one looks at the meaning of the word ta'alaw, if you get to the origin of the meaning, that the word ta'ala or ta'alaw is originally a derivative of the word ulu. Well, the word ulu means highness, or above, or aboveness, for lack of better words, or highness or loftiness. You'll find, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, that is the origin. So when you say someone to one ta'ala, originally it is as if you are saying that I am on the higher plank and that you are below, linguistically speaking, from the origin. So that shows in the tafsir, what we mentioned from the last class, that the Muslimun are the ones who are above. They are a'laun. And those who they're calling are on a lower plank, or lower level. Now listen to what it says. As we said, let us come, in the tafsir of the ayah, let us gather, us and you, upon something specific in which Allah clarified in the ayah, in the same context, as it says, Allah na'buda illallah, that we do not worship except Allah. So that is what is understood from the ayah, if one contemplates on the meaning. What is understood from the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ta'alaw, as if the Muslims are saying or calling to the non-Muslims, or those who are in a state of disbelief, أن المسلمون ثابتون على ما هم عليه, that we are firm upon what we're upon, and we will not compromise anything in the least from our religion. And while rather we are an أنهم الأعلون, they are on a high level, and other than them are on what is lower. على وغيرهم الأدنى والأسفل, and other than them they are lower, because the people of the monotheism and the people of Sunnah, they are Ashab al-Haq. They are the people of truth only. And other than them are upon falsehood. And that's not our statement first. That is our statement in actuality, but it goes back to what Allah has established. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that the people of Tawheed, they are al-a'laun. They are the highest. So it says, if in this ayah, which is in Surah Al-Imran, that we said last class, if one was to look to one of the shortest surah in the book of Allah, which is Surah Al-Kafirun, you'll find that the mushrikun, they asked or requested from the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wassalam to compromise something of his religion. And they tried to make a proposal, make a deal, that if you was to compromise something of the religion by them saying, "Oh Muhammad, worship our deity for 1 year, and we will worship your deity for 1 year." When they made this proposal to the Messenger of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded i'lan al-mufasala tamma. Allah wa ta'ala, that He commanded to announce that complete separation and that complete bara'ah, that complete division or disavowalment from them, and clarified to them that polytheism and monotheism will never gather together. And for that reason, you'll find that sababu nuzul al-ayah, of why this ayah was revealed, the Surah Al-Kafirun, was due to this proposal that the polytheists made. So when the polytheists came with this proposal, asking the Messenger of Allah to compromise, and likewise we'll compromise. And if you do this, then inshallah, that will become good between us and you. And this is exactly you'll find with the non-Muslims that they make with the Muslims in a lot of different places. They bring this proposal to them. And if you find that this was a way of the mujrimeen, this was the sabilul mujrimeen, this was the path of those who were destroyed and doomed from the past. They came with these type of statements and these proposals in order for the Muslims to water down or compromise or cajole the people falsehood. For verily, if you look in the ayah Surah Al-Imran, it says, "Come to what is between something that is equal between us and you." Hence, that we are upon the truth. It's as if one is saying when he recites this ayah, that we are upon the truth and you're upon falsehood. And verily, if you prefer a sa'ada, if you prefer salvation and true prosperity and victory over complete failure and eternal doom, then come to us and leave off what you're upon of falsehood. And if you refuse and reject that, then there will be nothing except absolute shaqawa. There will be nothing except absolute plain, unadulterated loss in the hereafter, and in this world and in the hereafter. And woe to you, and from the woe or the wail or that punishment in the hellfire, from the punishment of Allah ta'ala. So a lot of people, when they recite this ayah, they're not exactly knowing what they're reciting. Some people will say it and they'll read it not knowing the heavy weight or the heavy meanings that this ayah contains. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clarifying this kalima, that is us, that is equal between the people of the book and us. That word that is equal is La ilaha illallah, meaning that you come and you purify and you actualize La ilaha illallah. And that you come with negation and affirmation, meaning that you come and say La ilaha illallah, not just uttering it verbally and that's it, but also carrying out what necessitates it. From leaving off the worship of men, or worship of the sun, or anything that Allah created, whether they be from human beings, righteous or wretched. It does not matter. And also them leaving off every aspect of polytheism. And from polytheism, as we just gave some examples in last class, the belief in superstitions, the belief in myths and superstitions and bad luck or zodiac signs, or the belief that practicing magic is something that is good and it will benefit society. All these are affairs in which that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established in this ayah, that the people that is upon disbelief, what they will have to leave off if they truly wanted for us to gather and unite. That they basically will have to leave off polytheism and embrace in totality La ilaha illallah, by leaving off every aspect of polytheism. Every aspect of polytheism in every shape, form, or fashion, and also embracing that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam is the final prophet and messenger. طيب. So notice that it mentions in the ayah that it says سواء بيننا وبينكم أن لا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به شيئا. That we do not worship except Allah, that we do not unify anything in its worship except Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Anything in the least, as we know, this is nakiratun fi siyaqin nafi, that this is indefinite in the context of a negation which generalizes everything and anything. That we do not set up partners with Allah. Shay'a, as we know, that is nakiratun fi siyaqin nafi, is indefinite in the context of a negation which generalizes everything that is created. So the belief in bad luck, or the belief in zodiac signs, and the belief in myths, and the belief that anything of the creation has some type of impact or effect over your life. And if you believe that thing that Allah has created has this type of effect, in which only Allah has that effect or that impact over your life or that dominance, then you have fell into polytheism, in which Allah Ta'ala has prohibited. So we're saying that one has to leave off associating of partners with Allah subhanahu jalla fil ula in every aspect. Whether even being one ascribing a blessing to other than Allah, even if it's to himself. As you'll find that a lot of people out of arrogance and haughtiness do this. That's also part of the polytheism that Allah has prohibited. Even one could ascribe a bounty to himself is a type of polytheism, and which comes as a result of it is arrogance and looking down upon the creation. As you'll find certain people out there, for example, that they praise themselves based upon the type of worldly things they have gained and they acquired. You'll find that there are people out there that have amassed a lot of dunya, and they'll say to you, you see this right here? This is all me right here. This is due to my hard work. This is me. Or this is due to my intelligence. This is due to me being so cunning and me being so skilled and diverse in skills and in the different types of talents I've been given. If you'll find that this is a type of which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited, and where one ascribes a bounty to himself. So now you're saying, based upon what you have gathered of dunya, that you're the reason for it. A person, when he has the proper belief in creed, he says and knows that he is just the reason, and that Allah ultimately is the one who allowed him, and not only allowed him by him waking up every morning and seeing another day where we know people die in their sleep, but also Allah is the one that has given you that intelligence, and he is the one that has given you those skills, and he is the one that has given you tawfiq, success, so you can be muwaffaq, so you can be granted that success in that particular field, or that particular line of work, or that business that you own, or that ability that you had to study and pass those tests. All of that was something that Allah has given you. So that is a type of monotheism. All these are different types of polytheism in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited. That the only way that Ahl Sunnah, that they would come together, is that they would have to basically leave off what they're upon of falsehood and come to what we're upon, or what they're upon and what we're upon, inshaAllah, meaning us as Ahl Sunnah and the people of Tawheed, and embrace monotheism wholeheartedly. So that's the meaning of the ayah. You'll find Al-Imam Al-Tabari that he said in this ayah in Surah Al-Imran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he mentions this ayah in Surah Al-Imran, that he says, وَالْكَلِمَةُ الْعَدْلُ هي أن نوحد الله فلا نعبد غيره ونبرئ من كل معبود سواه فلا نشرك به شيئا. You find the great Imam al-Tabari that he mentioned and said that kalima that is mentioned in the ayah, al-kalimat al-adl, that which is the perfect word that is considered moderate. Moderate and equal, what it is that we unify Allah in His worship. We do not worship other than Him, and that we free ourselves from anything that is worship or associated along with Allah in His worship. That is the word that is kalimat al-adl. That is the so-called middle ground, or the moderate word, the moderate word between us and them. That is the moderate word. That is the just word. And that those are boundaries that should not be exceeded, even though all the people of disbelief have exceeded the bounds in that regard. Notice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, Surah Al-Imran, that we do not take each other as lords besides Allah. That we do not take each other as lords besides Allah. That which is another type of polytheism, as we talked about, is allowing those who are, doesn't matter whether they are leaders or whether they are people of high religious status, that we do not take them as lords besides Allah. Lords besides Allah, meaning that we obey them in what they bring forth of legislations that oppose what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down of legislations. And this happened with the people of the book, with those who are considered from their religious leaders. And this takes place amongst the Muslims especially, even in the non-Muslim countries, by them embracing other legislations and replacing what Allah has sent down with man-made laws. For this is also a type of monotheism where it's obligatory for one to purify Allah's worship in, which you'll find that a lot of people deviate in this aspect. And not only that, they'll forget that this is also part of actualizing La ilaha illallah. Part of actualizing La ilaha illallah and purifying it is from unifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His legislation, in His tashri', in His legislation. Meaning that we do not embrace, nor do we believe that any legislation that is man-made, or no matter who it is or what it is equal or better with the legislation that Allah has sent down. And that we replace the laws and the systems and the ways or the protocol or the legislations that Allah has sent down with His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and that we replace it with a type of protocol which is man-made. And this you'll find, like we said, is in regards to politics. And a lot of people think, like we said, that worship is only restricted to what we perform, for example, of salah or zakah or siyam, forgetting about the aspect of what? Of politics. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down, along with the truth as far as in worship, Allah sent down perfect legislations for lands to be governed by. And for them to be what? For them to be a way to rectify the society and to rectify also al-mujtama'at, the different countries and the lands that there may be, from what people utilize as laws that are man-made. And this is the reason why you find that those lands that has in them, or that they implement man-made laws, that there's a lot of havoc and chaos and confusion and argumentation and controversy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to save the creation from this type of disputation and this type of differing. So when Allah sent down the final revelation, Allah also binded upon the people to also embrace His legislation in the aspect of how countries and lands and societies are supposed to be ran. You'll find that Allah has legislated hudud, the penalties for certain sins and crimes that are committed. There's a whole chapter on it, and there's ayat on it, of what the leader is supposed to do by carrying out what Allah has commanded and binded upon a ruler, in order for it to be a punishment, and in actuality it will be a mercy for them to return to what is correct. So penalties and establishing the hudud is all a part of running a land and protecting the thagharat, of protecting the barriers and the lands from them being attacked, is also from the responsibilities of the ruler, in which Allah has clarified in His book, in the authentic Sunnah. And like we said, there are books in this regard. From them is the book by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, which is called As-Siyasat al-Shar'iyyah, the legislated politics. As-Siyasat al-Shar'iyyah, the legislated politics, by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, to let one know that we do not need man-made laws and that we do not need man-made politics, because Allah, when He sent down and perfected His religion, He gave everything we needed, even the ahkam and the rulings, in order to perfect the different types of systems and protocols and legislations, so men and mankind in general can have peace in their lands. And society can be what? Can be administrated in a proper manner, where the poor is not oppressed, or that the rich dominate, or they try to overwhelm or exploit the poor, as likewise what we see in these societies. And other than that, from the different calamities that these systems carry, except who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected from them embracing the truth and being steadfast and holding on to it. So that's from the meaning of the ayah in Surah Al-Imran, that we do not take each others as lords besides Allah, meaning in regards to whether or not those people be religious leaders or whether they be from the rulers of lands. That if they was to come with a legislation that opposes Allah and His Messenger, that we do not follow them in that, because that is a form of taking them as lords besides Allah. Is that we follow them in their legislations that they came, and that was one of the reasons why the people of the book in the past, from the Jews and the Christians, went astray, because those who are in authority from their religious leaders changed the legislation that Allah has sent down with their prophets at that particular time, and the people followed them in that, and as a result of it, they fell into polytheism from the aspect of what they call tashri', legislation. And like we discussed in Kitab al-Tawheed, that if the people embrace those man-made laws that they came up with their own opinion, and what they deem to be good, replacing the legislations of Allah, what they deem to be good and what they deem to be befitting for the societies and for the lands, and saying this is what is better than what Allah sent down, and then the people followed them in that, then they have fell into polytheism, and they have fell into what has been mentioned in this ayah. They've taken them as lords besides Allah. And it doesn't matter whether they be religious leaders or whether they be people who are politicians, or whether they be people who are leaders over the lands. If they come with a legislation that opposes the book of Allah in regards to what Allah has sent down, and they bring forth a nizam taghuti, they bring forth a taghuti type of system that is considered a taghut, where are man-made laws, or they call them qawaneen wad'iyya bashariya taghutiyya, that they call man-made laws that was made by their lands that are taghutiyya jahiliya, lands that are laws or protocol that are taghuti. Taghuti, where it's obligatory upon the slave to reject and to denounce and to fully separate himself from, because it's the laws of jahiliyyah. Anything that is attached to it, the description of it being jahili, then it's incumbent upon the Muslim to stay far away from it and reject it, and not to believe whatsoever that it is something that is either equal to what Allah sent down or better than what Allah sent down, to the point where one will replace the legislation of Allah with the legislation of man-made laws. And what will come as a result of it, they have fell into this type of polytheism, which is polytheism in tashri', in legislation, in tashri'. And you'll find that a lot of Muslims partake in the non-Muslims in their politics and in their ways, and they fall into polytheism where they do not perceive wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. That's the reason why Ahlul Sunnah, they stay out of the politics, especially the politics of the non-Muslims, and they leave them to their affairs. And the Muslims, they take it upon themselves to make dua to Allah that no form of oppression will come, or will come as a result of it, they will be destroyed. And we leave the non-Muslims to their affairs and stay out of their affairs. And rather we gather along with the Muslims, and if one is able to make hijrah, if he's able to migrate and put himself in a circumstance where one is in the land of the Muslims, then one should do so. But if that's not the case, then one does not compromise. Because we know that when one joins the non-Muslim politics, then he is subjected to compromisal. And not only that, he's subjected to the most evil sin that any human being commit, which is polytheism. Polytheism and legislation. So that is one of the meanings of the ayah, that we do not take each other as lords besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why it says in the ayah, where Allah wa ta'ala that we mentioned, it said, وَلَا يَتَّخِذُ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا أَرْبَابًا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ, that we do not take each other as lords besides Allah. We already talked about the hadith of Adi ibn Abi Hatim. And he said in the end of the hadith, because I already mentioned this hadith many times. As it says in the last part, the Prophet ﷺ seen Adi ibn Abi Hatim wearing a cross around his neck. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, "Utruh an unuqika hada al-wathan." He said, get rid of from around your neck that polytheistic symbol. So Adi ibn Abi Hatim, the great Sahabi, had a cross around his neck. The Prophet ﷺ said before, he said to him, "Utruh an unuqika hada al-wathan," or kama qala an-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, get rid of from around your neck, or remove from around your neck, that polytheistic symbol. So he removed it. And then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the ayah, which came in Surah At-Tawbah. At the end of the ayah of the hadith, it says, "O Messenger of Allah, we did not used to worship them," meaning those lords or those rabbis or those monks and those religious leaders. Meaning that we never used to prostrate to them or pray to them or prostrate to them, or that we used to fast or pray zakah for their worship. So what type of worship are you talking about, Messenger of Allah? It's as if he's asking, because we didn't used to do this. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, didn't you not make lawful or make unlawful what Allah made lawful? Didn't they not make unlawful what Allah made lawful, and you made it unlawful? And didn't they make or legalize or make lawful what Allah made unlawful, and you legalized it, and you made it lawful? He said, yes. The Prophet ﷺ said, this is worshiping them. And a lot of Muslims in this regard forget that this is a type of tawheed, unification of Allah and His tashri', and His legislation. Not only in the legislation of worship, where the Muslims fall into bid'ah, where they fall into innovations and newly invented matters, because that's also part of legislation. But also in the affairs that's regarded to what? To how lands are governed and ran. How laws of the lands that in placing or putting in its place man-made laws is from the affairs in which you'll find that a lot of Muslims, that they're either heedless of or they follow their desires in embracing the man-made laws over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's legislation. And like we said, these affairs are very, very dangerous. And that a Muslim never exposes that he's taking a risk on his religion. If he knows that there's going to be a heavy risk and a danger where his religion will be compromised, or it will be watered down, or he will taint his monotheism, where he will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon that, is extremely dangerous. And it will subject one to the punishment of Allah in the hereafter, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us from that. You'll find that also the Imam al-Bayhaqi, we suffice for what was mentioned there. If you go back to also Surah Al-Imran, matter of fact, we'll mention a quick statement of the great Imam, I think Sheikh Abdurrahman ibn Yahya al-Mu'allimi al-Yamani, that he mentioned, فَكُلُّ مَنِ ادَّعَى أَنَّ لَهُ حَقَّ الطَّاعَةِ, I think it's Sheikh Abdurrahman ibn Yahya al-Mu'allimi, فَكُلُّ مَنِ ادَّعَى أَنَّ لَهُ حَقَّ الطَّاعَةِ لذاته بزعامته أو قداسته فقد جعل لنفسه الألوهية في الأرض. الله أكبر. ولو لم يصرح بكلمة فرعون، الله أكبر، أنا ربكم الأعلى، وتشجيعه بالإقرار والثناء عليه وإضفاء ثوب الشرعية والقداسة على ما يصدر منه shirkum billahi wa kufrun bihi. To the end of it. Listen to what he says. He says, every person that claims that he has the right of obedience, meaning due to him, either due to his leadership or due to his prominence of him being a leader or over the people, that is mutlaq al-ta'a, absolute obedience to me. No matter what I say, of whether it goes or opposes the truth, or legislations that agree or opposes the truth, it doesn't matter. For anyone that claims to think they have this right, absolute obedience, because we know absolute obedience is for Allah and His Messenger, either due to their high leadership, their za'ama, or their qadasa, or their high prominence of them being a religious leader. For example, فَجَعَلَ لِنَفْسِهِ الْأُلُوهِيَّةِ, absolute obedience in this regard, then he has made for himself uluhiyah, worship in the earth. Even though he did not verbally say with the word of Fir'aun, where Fir'aun said in the ayah, I am your highest Lord. But however, when a person comes with the statement, to me is absolute obedience, to me is mutlaq ta'a, even if I come with affairs that opposes what Allah and His Messenger is saying, you follow me in that. If they do this, this is the example of Fir'aun. Even though he did not verbalize exactly what Fir'aun said, that I'm your highest Lord, but by saying this statement and proposing to the people, or saying to the people that he has mutlaq al-ta'a, absolute obedience, this is the same thing what Fir'aun said, even though he did not say it in the exact wording that Fir'aun said. But as if he's still saying, I am your highest Lord. For a person would say, وَتَشْجِيعُهُ بِالْإِقْرَارِ وَالثَّنَاءِ عَلَيْهِ, and then he comes in encouraging the people by acknowledging this and then praising him for this, and he does it and clothes it and resembles it in the affairs of what is legislated, and him taking advantage of his prominence and his leadership. And if these affairs emanates from him, of these type of legislations and this type of example of saying to the people, to me belongs absolute obedience, then this is a type of what? Polytheism with Allah and disbelief in Him. Allahu Akbar. That's a tremendous, profound statement. Tremendous statement. And if you go to what the ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the ayah, it says, فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا, and if they turn away, meaning the non-Muslims. If you go back to Surah Al-Imran, if you look at your books in Usul al-Thalatha, like you said, brothers and sisters, these books are the utmost importance because they are the books that prepare you for the questions of the grave. All these affairs that we're covering now is part of preparation for the angels asking you those questions and you be remaining firm, in which you will need tawfiq from Allah to keep you firm, because one, being stable in the state of stability while the questions of the grave take place, which is in correlation to the investigation and the scrutiny of the angels and the hard that they will bring, as we know in some of the ahadith, that these angels that will come and will ask these questions will be very stern in how they look. As it says in some of the descriptions of them, shadidul intihar, very stern. Angels will come in the grave asking the questions. And in some of the narrations it says that they will have in their hands an instrument ready to strike if you forget those questions wrong. They will have in their hands an instrument ready to strike. This whole book of Usul al-Thalatha is preparation, in which one attains by one educating himself in these principles, in which you attain that stability from Allah that He give in His grave when these questions are asked. So the whole book of Usul al-Thalatha is preparation for the three questions that will be asked in the grave, even though some of the narrations say they are four. They are four questions, in which you'll find that some of them say in some of the narrations. You'll find, Ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, it says, فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا, if they turn away, meaning the non-Muslims and the disbelievers, after you have called them to the truth, without any compromise and without cajoling them, to make them feel good, to say, see, we're just like you and you're just like us. As you'll find that some callers about a falsehood has done in Britain months ago when he ascribes himself to Salafiyah. You'll find this type of compromisal, and I'm talking about Muhammad Munir, and I don't have no problem with saying it, that you'll find that they explained this ayah with compromisal, not giving the proper meaning of this ayah. The proper meaning of this ayah is remaining firm upon what is correct without any type of compromisal, and calling them to monotheism and leaving off their polytheism. And we do not say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to come in the form of a man. We do not say that. Why? Because that is considered the statement Allah is able to eat or Allah is able to sleep. And one does not say that. We do not say out of respect for Allah ta'ala that he is incapable, but we do not say or mention affairs that if it was connected to his ability, that it would necessitate a deficiency. That is from properly understanding your decree in the monotheism of Allah. We do not say, for example, if someone's to ask you, can Allah eat? And then you say Allah is able to do all things. That's improper. Because the affairs, or these type of affairs of eating and drinking and sleeping and becoming weary or tired or having children or becoming a human being, all of these affairs that if it was connected to his ability, it would necessitate a need, which is a deficiency. Sleep is a deficiency for the deity who is in power and dominant over everything. Slumber or weariness or tiredness or exhaustion or forgetfulness or heedlessness does not befit the Creator, because it shows deficiency, incompleteness. Same thing as you say if Allah comes in the form of a human being. Comes in a human being that has to sleep or die or defecate. It's incompleteness, deficiency. Or that he has to have a wife. That he has children. To have his lineage continue in the earth. All these are deficiencies, needs. It's not connected to his ability, tabarak wa ta'ala, because it would necessitate a deficiency, incompleteness. It does not befit the Creator, who's the one who's the all-powerful and dominant and complete in every aspect. Subhanahu. Jalla fil ula. For Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, that he says in his book, فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا, if they turn for what you call them of this truth, by them leaving all polytheism and embracing monotheism in all of its aspects that we just mentioned. He says, then testify that we're a people of monotheism. فَإِنْ أَعْرَضُوا عَمَّا دَعَوْتُمُوهُمْ إِلَيْهِ فَلَمْ يَقْبَلُوا دِينَ اللَّهِ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى وَأَبَوْا أن يوحدوا الله ويتبعوا هذا النبي الكريم عليه الصلاة والسلام وبقوا على ما هم عليه من الكفر والضلال. He says that they turn away from what you call them to, of the truth, and they did not accept the religion of Allah, and they refuse to unify Allah in His worship, and all of the different examples we've been given to the people, and they do not follow this generous, noble prophet, who's the best of all messengers. And they remain with their upon of disbelief and misguidance, then testify and say to them this statement. Testify and say to them, we are Muslimun. فَيَحْتَاجُ الْمُسْلِمُونَ إِلَى بَيَانِ مَوْقِفِهِمْ. Now listen to this part. Testify that we are Muslimun. What does that necessitate? Testify that they are Muslimun. So in front of them is either they're going to accept what you say or they're going to reject it. And if you reject, and they reject, now listen to this. It's incumbent upon the Muslims to clarify their position. Make their mawqif clear. Make their position and their mawqif clear. فَبَيَّنَهُ اللَّهُ بِقَوْلِهِ فَقُولُوا اشْهَدُوا بِأَنَّا مُسْلِمُونَ. Make your position clear. Testify that we are Muslimun upon monotheism and leaving all polytheism. And we'll never gather together. And will never unify based upon it ever. Testify to them, you continue upon the correct Islam and the correct understanding of it and the correct understanding in the correct position with the correct principles without any cajolement or compromise in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated. You'll find there's some Ahl Ilm that they mention the same in regards to this ayah. They say, وَقِيلَ لَزِمَتْكُمُ الْحُجَّةُ فَوَجَبَ عَلَيْكُمْ أَن تَعْتَرِفُوا بِأَنَّا مُسْلِمُونَ دُونَكُمْ كما يقول الغالب للمغلوب اعترف بأني أنا الغالب أو اعترف بأني أنا الغالب ولازمه اعترافكم على أنفسكم بأنكم كفار لتوليكم عن الحق. Then one of the meanings of this ayah is the last part, to testify that we're Muslim. He says لزمتكم الحجة ووجب عليكم تعترفوا. He says now the evidence and proofs are against you. After the Muslims had clarified what polytheism is, clarified it in the most clearest manner, that the evidences are binding upon you now. It's incumbent upon you to acknowledge and to confess that we are Muslimun beside you. Just as a person who's dominant says to the one who's been dominated, lil ghalib lil maghlub, that you acknowledge and that you what? That you admit that ana al ghalib. It's as if you're saying to them, I'm the one who's dominated, because we are upon monotheism, and monotheism is what dominates and what is considered what? True prominence and dominance, and one should never compromise that. Even if, like we said, his life is threatened. Never to compromise and say, I'm going to commit shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَلَازِمُهُ اِعْتِرَافُكُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ. And it's as if we're saying now it's binding upon you that you've confessed and acknowledged upon yourself that you are staying upon your disbelief due to you turning away from the truth. And both statements you'll find are correct. Both tafsir that we just mentioned. So either one clarifying their position, or it's as if one is saying that the proofs have been what? Established. Both of them are correct. You'll find that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, that he says in this ayah, about this ayah, that he mentioned in his tremendous works called Al-Jawab al-Sahih ala man baddala din al-Masih, the tremendous book by Shaykh al-Islam that he sent to the Christians. And the Christians even respected him from this book that he wrote, because they couldn't say anything. Where Shaykh al-Islam wrote a whole book rebuttaling the Christians about their belief that Jesus died on the cross. He sent a reply to them. And he wrote a book bringing the evidence and the facts to clearly establish that Jesus never died on the cross, rather it was someone else that died in his place with the resemblance of Jesus upon him. And that book was called, and he also brought all the evidences and proofs to show the one who truly changed the monotheism of what Jesus the Son of Mary was upon, where he entitled the book Al-Jawab al-Sahih, the authentic correct answer against the one who changed the religion of Jesus the Son of Mary. He said in this statement, or he said in this book, he said, قال شيخ الإسلام تيمية فأمره لهم أن يقولوا اشهدوا بأن مسلمون يتضمن إقامة الحجة عليهم كما كان المسيح يقول. Allahu Akbar. He says that in this ayah is a command for them, meaning the disbelievers or the people of the book, to say, testify that we are people of Tawheed, we're people of monotheism, people who unify Allah in His worship. He said this contains establishing the proof against them, similar to what Jesus the Son of Mary will do on the day of resurrection, and He will do and He has done when He was here on the earth when He was delivering His message. عليه الصلاة والسلام وعليه وعلى نبينا أفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم. So we will conclude the tafsir of this ayah by saying, this ayah, brothers and sisters, Surah Al Imran, if you look in your books, is Asasuddin al-Hanif. It is the true is the foundation of ad-din al-hanif, the true upright monotheistic religion, where its founded foundation is established upon. إذ بها تقرير وحدانية الربوبية وحدانية الألوهية. That this ayah is clearly an establishment and establishing the acknowledgement of the oneness of the rububiyyah and the wahdaniyya al-uluhiyyah and the worship of Allah in this ayah. And is not compromise of anything in the least. You'll find that that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ used to mention or used to recite this ayah. Oh, sorry, this surah that contains this ayah. Excuse me, everyone. That the Messenger of Allah used to recite it in abundance in the salah, especially in the 2 rak'at of Fajr. وَيَدْعُ بِهَا الْكِتَابِ, and he will call by it the people of the book to Iman. Just as the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has sent to Heraclius, which was the king of Rome, Hiraql, وَالْمُقَوْقَسِ, and also the one whose name was Muqawqas, who was the king of Egypt, and in which he would mention. Similar to what the Messenger of Allah, when he sent his message to these people, when he sent it to Heraclius, who was the king of Rome, he said, for example, Min Muhammad Rasulullah, Allahu Akbar. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ wrote this in his letter. He said, from Muhammad to the Heraclius, Azim al-Rum. He said, the mighty one of Rome. Now listen to what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, did he compromise and say, salams to you? Listen to this. Listen very carefully to what the Messenger of Allah said in his letter to Heraclius. He said, salamun ala man ittaba al-huda. Allahu Akbar. Salams upon the one who follows the proper guidance. Amma ba'd. فإني أدعوك بدعاية الإسلام. أسلم تسلم. وأسلم يؤتيك الله أجرك مرتين. فإن توليت فإن عليك إثم الأريسين أو إثم الأريسين. So the Messenger of Allah said in this last part as to what follows. Verily I call you with the calling of Islam. That if you submit, aslim, taslam. That if you submit to Allah and to what is proper guidance, you will attain security. Taslam. You will attain security and you'll be saved. Wa aslam, you surrender, submit yourself to Allah, Allah will give you a reward twice. And if you turn away, it will be against you the sin that is twice. The sin of being upon disbelief and continuing in that. And turning away from the proper guidance once it's came to you. Or once it's come to you, excuse me. We'll stop here, inshallah. We'll put a mark and we'll continue the next tafsir or the next ayah, in which the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab talked about the second asl, which is the testimony that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. We'll stop here. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.